And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Trolling with Logic. And I don't know what, the date is the 10th of May 2014. It's 8 p.m. Central European Time, 7 p.m. in the UK, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time over in the States. Just the usual announcements. Like I say, it's a live call-in show. You can call in any time, as you can see below us. Skype contact Trolling with Logic, and we'll add you in due course to ask your question to the guest or the panel. And also to remind yourself that this show, everything's recorded and uploaded later, so if you call in, you do grant us permission to use your likeness. Also with that, the show is recorded under a public domain license, so once it's uploaded, feel free to mirror it in part or whole, just link back to us as a common courtesy. And I don't think there's any other big announcements. No. So I'll just go very quickly around the panel and welcome you back, Kit. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
That's grand. And welcoming back and in full motion, Marty, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing much better now.
Yeah, you can actually move now on the screen.
Yeah, I can move now, and wow, I got this new camera like 3 weeks ago, and then of course my face turned into something that, well, basically I looked like when I was 15.
Yeah.
Like I had chicken pox, but that's taken care of now. So I'm actually moving today.
Yep, that's great to hear. So I think we can just get straight into introduce our guest, and I hope I've remembered all the details correct. He's an associate professor of zoology at Stockholm University. He's written the book God Probably Does Not Exist. And he wrote a book in Swedish. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the title. Marty, it's Cooperation, the name of the book, so you can pronounce the Swedish title.
Samarbete.
Yes, and he is currently working on a project called The Divine Placebo, looking into the placebo effects of religion on society. So, Marty, I'll let you introduce the guest, and you can do it in your native tongue. Just say, welcome to.
Välkommen till Trolling with Logic.
Tack så väldigt.
Lindenfors.
Tack så väldigt mycket. It's an honor to be on the show.
All right, it's great to have you. So, we'll get you. Well, we'll probably go to the very start, like the first book and that. So, where did the idea for that come about?
This one?
Yeah, that one. That
one.
Yeah.
I have to plug the books.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a simple idea. I ended up in all these discussions about God and if God exists and everything. I thought that the arguments against God's existence are so simple a child could understand them. And so I thought, but there is no such children's book. So I thought that was my mission, and to summarize it as easily as possible so that anyone could get it.
All right. And I think that guest's asking the same questions he did last week. Why did you not put Muhammad on the front cover of the book?
I'm sorry?
Why did you not put Muhammad on the front cover of your book?
Well, it's Allah, actually, if you look closely.
That's what you call pwned.
Because apparently it's okay to depict Allah or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting question. You're not supposed to depict anything in Islam, are you? I'm not sure about that.
I think it's just Muhammad, isn't it?
No, that's true. It's just Muhammad. It's his white. It depends on the sect, isn't that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was just interested because you wrote the book, and I've spoken to Marty about this because he says like in Sweden, like religion's a very private matter, and Marty says like he's always seen himself as a bit of an outsider because he's very interested in religion and he's an outspoken atheist. So, I mean, how did you end up like that, going against kind of what we do?
Well, I have a bit of a special story because I went to Catholic convent school as a kid. My first 9 years in school. There's one Catholic convent school in Sweden. And
Vadstena, eller?
No, it's in Sockenplan in Stockholm.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was taught by nuns all through my basic education, which is rather odd. And this gave me in Sweden, especially since I'm not Catholic or even my parents are not religious. But the school in the area I grew up was very poor, and my mother just freaked out, and she put me in this convent school instead. and which was a pretty good school, but it was deeply religious, and it's hard to have all these people around you who kind of devote their lives to a religion, and then you come home, and my parents were not religious, so their take on it was like, well, that's just what they think. It's not important. You can just go to the school and everything. So it made me think very early about these things.
Yeah. So what's some of the more interesting experiences of going to Catholic school that you can remember?
Well, sexual education is pretty special to get from nuns. I'm not sure I should go into that any more than that. But there was no, well, I mean, it's all very normal when you grow up in it.
Yeah.
Anything is normal when you grow up in it.
So is it difficult to kind of, when you left the Catholic school, to get used to just being, because you said the first 9 years of your schooling was in a Catholic school, yeah?
Yeah.
And so then going into like basically the secular schooling, was that a big change?
Yeah, I moved to the States.
Right.
Then my father worked in Washington, so we moved there, and I went to American high school, which was completely different. Everyone was smoking pot, and it was not in the religious part of Virginia, but it was different.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Marty or Kitch, do you want to come in? I think Marty, you see.
Yeah, I was thinking, if we go back to the book, the arguments against the existence of God, you said were so simple that even a child can understand it. But there we get into the whole arguments against what God, because everyone has this. Every theist has their own idea of what God is.
Yeah.
And I usually don't even try to say that God doesn't exist. I simply say I don't believe that he does, and try to argue against, point out problems with the arguments they give for the existence of God. Could you give some examples of these arguments against?
Yeah, actually, the very first picture in the book is of different gods. Yeah. Here we go. And there is a heart somewhere for God is love and so forth. So it's about it's several pages in the book. So there are several arguments that it's gone through, and they all relate to different concepts of God. I mean, if you say God is love, that's just a play of words, basically. And if God is a guy in the sky, there's no such evidence. And if he's outside time and space, you're just making it up, and so on. It's you have to like walk through these different ideas of God and take them one by one, basically, and end up with a conclusion that there is no concept of God that seems reasonable. That's how I try to do it.
Yeah. So, what's your kind of overall goal for the book? I mean, do you want to see it maybe like kind of given out in schools or by parents to their kids along with Bibles?
I'm not sure. I want, kids who grow up in religious families and religious contexts who never meet these arguments. My goal is that if they pick up this book just out of curiosity, they will get interested and start seeing the gaps in the argument they have been presented with, and so on. I mean, most Swedes, as Martin knows, are not very interested in religion, so it's not a goal to get most Swedes to read it, because they couldn't care less, which is fine by me. But people who do care, kids who do care, I hope they read it.
All right. And what kind of reaction has the book got so far?
Well, not much reaction at all. It's got good reviews, but there is no one burning it or anything, which it's kind of required to get these books to take off.
Yeah, because it was picked up. Richard Dawkins is promoting it, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Because we had another guest on a few weeks ago, and their work got picked up by Richard Dawkins.
No, I got the book translated, and the Swedish publisher published it in English, and so I sent this book to Richard Dawkins' librarian. The person handling the bookshop on Richard Dawkins' website. And she thought it was a good book.
All right.
And that's the way it came about.
Okay, Kitch, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. I was actually on your website and I was just looking at some of the research areas that you were interested in.
Okay.
And one of the things that caught my eye was phylogenetic analysis of sexual size dimorphism.
Yeah.
Could you kind of give a brief rundown of what exactly that is?
Yeah, that was my thesis. So it's phylogenetic analysis means that you use family trees for the statistics on understanding how evolution works, and you can test hypotheses. And the hypothesis I tested was basically Darwin's hypothesis. If differences in how males monopolize matings play out over millions of years and make the sexes different in size. And I tested this on primates and shorebirds and pinnipeds, seals and sea lions. And it turned out Darwin was right.
So that sexual dimorphism. So I'm not too sure if I got you correctly there. That sexual sexual dimorphism is something not unique to primates, but it's in other branches.
No.
Or what exactly?
Sexual dimorphism just means that the sexes are different. You can see the difference between males and females. And for example, in gulls you can't, but in a gorilla you can. And so there's the question is why are some sexes different and in other species they're not?
Yeah, I have, well, I'm actually down to 6 budgies now. Used to have 7, one died.
Oh, shit. Sorry everyone, I've lost Skype, so I will get it back in a second. Sorry about this, my Skype just crashed. I hope you can hear me right now. No one did anything wrong, give me 1 second. And welcome back everyone. Sorry about that, had a little tech glitch, the Skype crashed. So can we pick up where we left off? I think, Marty, you were talking about your budgies.
Yes, I was just pointing out that males and females are really hard to tell apart, especially when they're young.
Yeah. And
so that's kind of what he was talking about.
Yeah, according to Darwin, and then they're probably monogamous. Because if the males don't fight over females and they have a common interest of getting as many young as possible out in the world, then they don't turn up very different. But in gorillas, for example, where a male can monopolize a number of females, the fight for that position becomes very important. So you can look at lifestyle and try to and predict what species will be different and what species will not be.
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because budgies are pretty much monogamous.
Yeah.
All right, Kitch, did you have anything else?
Not that I could tell. Just going on from that question. We also study phylogenetic comparative methods
Yeah.
What kind of methods are there actually in phylogenetics?
I'm not what level should I put that answer? But phylogenetics is statistics with the relatedness of species taken into account, because species become similar because they're related. And if you want to test hypotheses, you want to have independent observations, and two species were similar because they are related is just one observation. That's the basic idea of phylogenetic methods, and it's a field of statistics that's taken off since '89 or something like that, and it's become really big and important in biology.
And you could compare using different. You could compare using different. What's the best way to say this? You compare like using genetics, or.
Well, what you do is you make a tree, and you can make the tree from from traits, or you can make it from genetics. That's more common these days. And then when you have the tree, you just you put that information into the statistical test. So the statistical tests can calculate the independent. The statistical test can incorporate the information of relatedness, and that becomes very important if you want to test evolutionary hypotheses.
I just wanted to come in there at this point, because it seems like you've started applying a lot of the evolutionary ideas to religion, like Ona mentioned at the start, your upcoming project. Was it quite easy just to apply, like, your educational background to such a thing?
No, I'm working now on a center called the Center for Study of Cultural Evolution.
Yeah.
And the idea was that I should just take my knowledge of phylogenetic methods and use that on cultural data, because, language, you can make a phylogenetic tree out of language information. Maybe you can do the same kind of analysis. And it turns out that culture works very differently. Language is the trait that is most similar to how biology works. So for language, it works fine. But once you start mapping other characters on these trees, it kind of fails. So it didn't work as we thought. And now the question is how to incorporate historical information when you study culture. It becomes more difficult, because there is some kind of tree structure there. It's just not as clear.
Can you give some example of what kind of traits you're talking about?
Well, we're studying now democracy. How come? Democracy is a trait that it has a history, and it's spreading across the world, and it's one trait that it's not evolving according to language, because English. Sorry, bad example. So Spanish-speaking countries have not evolved out of each other together with their concept of democracy, but democracy kind of more functions like a disease that spreads across countries. So maybe that's a better model for that particular trait.
Okay, we've got a chat room question there. Marty, sure. You can read it out.
Sorry? I can see.
No, Marty.
Okay. How is it possible to communicate to a mass of people that disagree with you? A lot of religious people would just completely ignore an atheist without listening to them. Would you expect any religious people to read your books?
Yes, I do. I think, curiosity is it's a human trait, and a kid who grows up in a religious context and sees my book, hopefully will start wondering what's that all about, and hopefully try to pick holes in it, see where the errors in the argument is, and so on, and therefore read it curiously. But sure, there are people who don't want counter-arguments to their views, and that's not just a religious trait, but I think that's goes for everyone.
All right, and there's another one just come in, and I'll get Kutch to read the next question.
Some people consider religious indoctrination to be child abuse because it teaches kids that they must worship a god or they will burn eternally in hell. The worst possible conditions imaginable. Is it immoral to teach kids about something so brutal as hell or other religious punishments?
I don't have a definite view of that. I mean, I think every parent should have the rights to teach their kid what they think is important. And if you think that they will burn for all eternity in a horrible place unless they have a certain faith, I mean, you can't stop people from teaching them that. I just think that all schools should be neutral on that point, and then let the parents teach their kids what they like. That's my point of view. So religious schools, it's not a good idea, because then you can really isolate the kid from everything.
All right.
And I would like to add to that I would say, yes, I think it's immoral to teach kids something like that, but I acknowledge that what one parent teaches their kid, that's none of my business. So I have an opinion about it, and yes, I think it's immoral, but I'm not in charge.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and because I'm guessing like the threat of hell was used a lot when you were in Catholic school.
Oh yeah, I have stories from the nuns. I mean, I remember my first year nun who she told the whole class about how she got followed home by the devil who was trying to entice her to come over to the dark side, and these kinds of stories. And I believe them. It can still send a shiver down my spine to think about these stories, you know. I really believed that.
Yeah, because there's one of our, well, she's not here, one of our panelists. She's still in high school in Ireland, and you know, she blogs about her experiences. And I think the one experience I remember her telling was when they talked about abortion in class.
Oh. Okay.
And the nun said that she was in hospital in England once, and then in the bed next to her, even though it was behind a curtain, the woman was getting an abortion, and she could hear the baby crying as they were killing it.
Oh.
I mean, that's
horrible.
It's
really horrible.
Yeah, that's probably one of the worst ones I've ever heard. That.
Yeah, really.
Because it's just horrible and just completely wrong and a lie and everything else.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about your second book for a bit, the cooperation or
the cooperation one. I have translated it, but it's on language checking right now because I'm not a native speaker, so someone has to read through it. But it's about the biological and cultural evolution of cooperation, because that's what really got me interested in evolutionary theory in the first place. How come all this cooperation we see around us can exist if evolution is, you know, competition basically?
Because that's a common argument we hear from creationists is, you know, if evolution is true, then why are we compassionate? Why do we get along with people?
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, the answer, it's fascinating that selfish genes can evolve into cooperating individuals because it's in the gene's interest. And you can even calculate sometimes to what exact degree cooperation should occur in different social systems. And basically, it's what Richard Dawkins wrote about in The Selfish Gene. So I just changed viewpoints and looked at it from the perspective of cooperation. But it's the same story. But now it's been updated with recent research on cultural evolution, and because humans, we cooperate a lot more than would be expected from a genetic viewpoint.
Suppose I'll ask, lean into that. Do you believe that evolution has had some impact on morality? Because this is one that's debated quite a lot.
Yeah, I do. I think maybe it's not a good basis to make decisions about morality, but I think our basic ethical impulse comes from our genes.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marty, you coming in there?
Yeah, you did say something in a talk you gave, and I assume you mentioned this in the book as well, that one thing about cooperation is that it seems to imply intent,
Mm-hmm.
and that basically it's one thing when organisms cooperate, even if they're, shall we say, lower organisms, they can still sort of get that, yeah, this benefits me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have things that aren't alive, and you gave some examples. I can't remember what it was, where some things cooperate, but sometimes it's not cooperation. Like, for example, the laws of nature
Oh, okay.
don't cooperate.
Yeah,
It just
it depends on what your definition of cooperation is.
Yeah.
I mean, just working together is not cooperation, because then the laws of nature are cooperating to make a universe, and that's not really what we mean by cooperation. So there has to be some benefit to an actor involved in this, and then benefit in biological terms is more copies of your genes in the next generation. And so once you have that, you can have costs and benefits, and then all of a sudden you're in life, because there's no other benefit you can find in nature.
So you wouldn't say that atoms cooperate.
Well, it's a borderline case. They fill their outer shell with electrons, but that becomes stretching it a bit more.
Is that a benefit?
Yeah.
That's obviously the question there.
Would you say that microorganisms cooperate in a way
Absolutely.
that?
I mean, once you say once you define the benefit of cooperation as more copies of genes, then you have cooperation between genes, between cells, between bacteria, between cells in your body, and so on. Because all those things benefit the spread of genes, and so, yeah.
So you would say, like, pretty much across the animal kingdom, cooperation's very common.
Yeah, I mean, in plants, multicellular plants are cooperating entities of cells. So that's also cooperation. And inside each cell, there are cooperating genes, because if they don't spell out the correct instructions, they don't get copied to the next generation. That's the end of it.
We've got 2 chat room questions there, so go back to Marty for the first one.
Okay, this goes back, I think, to what we were talking about earlier. This kind of fits with education and religion. What is a way to resolve it with people of different faiths and them raising their children? I'm not sure I understand the question there.
No, me neither.
Yeah,
But I guess, I mean, the thing we have in Sweden, for example, we have a lot of we have some immigrants who come in, and of course they want to live together, and maybe they want to put their kids in the school together, because that's makes you feel safe. But once you start getting religious schools where everyone is of the same faith, everyone is the same ethnicity, and so on, you get these isolated pockets of.
And if I can jump in there, it's not. I think it's not just about religion and ethnicity. It's about culture, even subculture.
Yeah,
there are several things where you don't want kids to be isolated, because they'll just have their, whether it's religious beliefs or whether it's attitudes in general, they just won't see anything else.
Yeah.
No. And it's the same for It's the same for Swedes. I mean, if you go to ethnically cleansed Swedish schools, it's the same problem. So it's good to have a mixture of things.
Yeah, it's a shame Pumpkin's not here, because I mean, he lives in Northern Ireland, where that's kind of...
Oh, it's a big issue, I guess.
Yeah, where I think Kitsch, basically by the name of the school, you know their religion and their political beliefs.
Okay.
It's just listen to Kitsch. Now, if you say if you say you go to Saint something or other, it's a Catholic school, you're a Republican and all this. There's that kind of baggage they attach to it.
Pretty much whatever your religious views are kind of immediately stamped you as whether as a Republican, as a nationalist, or etc., and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Yep. So there was another question there, and Kitch, we'll go over to you for the next question.
Okay. This is from All Hail Discordia. For me, it was looking at other faiths that was the last straw. Do you think it's a good thing to have a varied religious education, like some countries do? Should the position of atheism be addressed as well?
Well, I think absolutely there should be a good religious education in school, and you should learn about all religions and other forms of other views of life as well in school. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a member of the Swedish Humanists, and they work very hard to make this point. We should have a better religious education in schools.
Yeah, because, well, in Scotland, we had religious education, but it was, well, because it was Protestant where I grew up, and it was just saying, like, Catholics are weird, Hindus have funny knives, Muslims have beards, but we're good, ours just makes sense, so stick with it. That's what it was, basically. And,
That's interesting.
and also, in line with that, we also had religious observance, which was separate from religious education, which was an hour a week. We had a big school-led, basically, church service, and it still goes on to this day.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, yeah, I really lost my faith in India on meeting Hinduism and seeing, it's a very intellectual religion.
Yeah.
And my nuns had taught me that, it's just idolatry and don't stay away from that. But once you start reading about it, it makes actually more sense than Christianity in some ways, because I mean, there's no problem of evil in Hinduism. You have good gods and you have evil gods, and so of course evil exists in the world.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I discussed religion with a Jain teacher, and Jains are strict vegetarians, and he asked me the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism, because he couldn't understand why there was a split. So I told him about the Eucharist, and that Catholics actually believe they are eating Christ, and he was like, as a vegetarian, it was wrong on so many levels.
Because it's quite weird, because when I was growing up, I asked the people in my village, because there was so much Catholic hatred, and I said, so what are Catholics? And they called them devil worshippers.
Oh, really?
And then when I actually went to university, I met some Catholics and said, so what do you think of Protestants? Said, they're atheists. They're not So it's like... Yeah. But then I would ask why, and they just could never explain it. It's kind of weird how ingrained that becomes in some people.
Yeah.
All right.
I just find it very interesting that anyone would say that Protestants are atheists. I mean, it's among Protestants that you find the fundies.
Yeah, well, it was...
They would say that everyone who isn't a fundamentalist is an atheist.
Yeah. Well, it was weird.
More or less.
If you remember when we had Michael Nugent on, he went into this in Ireland, and there was a woman who wanted to get... Well, her husband had died and he was an atheist, and nowhere in Ireland would take the burial. And they had to go to a cemetery in Northern Ireland. They said, oh yeah, no problem. We'll go. And they said, it's over there. And she asked, all right, so why is this? Oh, that's where we bury the rest of the Protestants. And it's, I mean, it's unreal. It's these things still go on. Like,
yeah.
And like I said, there was another chat room question there. And who wants to take it?
Yeah, let's see. Where or how are the lines drawn between promoting multiculturalism and diversity and allowing cultural and subcultural identity to flourish?
Get it.
Yeah, it's. I don't see the difference. Where are the lines drawn between promoting multiculturalism and diversity and allowing cultural and subcultural identity to flourish?
Yeah.
Uh,
It sounds like two ways of saying the same thing.
Yeah, but there is an issue with multiculturalism that's sometimes becomes an issue. It's when human rights are not really implemented all across the board, and for example, you can lock some immigrants in Sweden lock their daughters inside, and which is not a nice thing to do. And of course, everyone should have the same basic human rights, and after that, they should be able to do whatever they want. That's my basic viewpoint on that.
All right. Like I said, we can talk about the divine placebo idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how did you come up with that idea, like the religion as a placebo? What was the kind of idea?
Well, it's an idea. It's an idea that floats around on the internet, and Richard Dawkins spends about this much in The God Delusion about that idea and saying it's not important without any backing it up. But if you start to think about it, traditional medicine is all mixed up with medicine men and religious rituals and these voodoo people who, if you are sick, you go to some religious person who does a ritual for you. And so why is that mix up there? Perhaps it's because religious rituals have the same ingredients as what gives a placebo response when you test medicines. That's the idea behind it. So I want to check what gives a placebo response, and is that also present in religious rituals? And
are you talking about things like feeling the Holy Spirit or something like that, or are you talking about like making prayer work to make you healthy, or what?
Yeah, so it's works on different levels. There's one health effect that comes from just obeying certain religious rules, like don't drink, don't smoke, stay with your family, and so on. So you get some health benefits from healthy living. That's not really a placebo effect, though. But then there are then you can get situations where, for example, if in voodoo rituals you can sacrifice a pig to please evil spirits who have made you sick. I've witnessed one of those rituals once, and it's very powerful stuff. It feels like magic is happening all around you, and it feels like spirits are coming. I mean, I'm sure you can recognize this feeling of you get caught up in it's dark and it's very warm and it's the fire burning somewhere and it's a strange stressed priest doing something. And this kind of these feelings do things with your brain that you can invoke in when you test placebo response as well.
Someone in the chat room is asking, do these religious rituals produce measurable neurological or neurochemical effects?
I haven't gotten to that chapter yet. I'm sorry.
That was an interesting question.
Yes, there's a field called neurotheology, which is very debated, and I really have to read up on that to see if there's any substance to what they're stating. But they are measuring the brain waves of monks who are meditating and so on, and claiming that there are differences. I haven't evaluated that part yet. Sorry.
Patrik, just one thing that's come up. We seem to be getting a kind of buzzing noise from you when you're talking. I don't know. Can you just check your connections are okay?
Yeah. Sure.
It's a little bit better. Is that okay for you, Marty, as well?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
I think it was a loose wire or something.
Okay.
Oh no, it's come back.
Now
I hope it's better.
But it's a little better anyway.
Yeah, that's a little better. There was one thing I got asked this earlier. with regards to the placebo effect. I don't know if you have in Sweden, but with hospital chaplains, would that be an example of it?
That's an interesting question. Well, I'm sure hospital chaplains can invoke placebo effects in believers. But the same can happen with doctors. I mean, doctors do the same thing. If you trust your doctor...
I'm sorry, the buzzing just got worse. Sorry.
Still buzzing?
It's coming and going.
Yeah.
No?
Okay,
it's still there.
It's
better.
I'm not sure where it's coming from. If it's the mic or the wire.
Yeah.
Do you want me to check another pair of headphones?
Yeah, we'll just try and cover the topic right now. So I don't know, Marty, do you get that in Sweden, the hospital chaplains as well?
I don't know. I've never really paid attention to that.
Yeah, because it's definitely in Scotland. And this
I know there are priests connected to hospitals, but I don't know if they do much.
Hey, echo. Cool. But well, yeah, we have them in Scotland as well, but this will probably be in the next show when we have again, we're having the chairman of the Secular Society. Oh, that's much better.
Is it? Can
Yeah.
you hear?
Yeah, but you're very quiet, so just turn up your microphone a little bit.
Very quiet. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little faint, but the buzzing's gone.
Okay. What do you want? Faint and no buzzing or not faint?
I think faint is better.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No buzzing. It's fine.
So just saying, like, if I don't know if in your microphone properties maybe try turning it up. It could have turned down when you switched mics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So let's try that. Yeah, just like I say, on the next show we have Spencer Fields, the chairman of the newly elected chairman of the Scottish Secular Society.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, that's it. It's still the same there.
It's still the same microphone properties. Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's strange. It was funny. It was fine before the show, all of this.
Yeah.
And then it just started. It's always the way it goes. That these things happen. And
Yeah.
so, chat room, if you have any questions while we try and sort this out, this has been the first tech problems we've had in months. Really,
Yeah.
it had to happen eventually. We had to get one, but
I'm sorry, I'm causing this. Okay. Yeah. Where are the mic properties? I'm not sure
Right.
where to look for this. Maybe you can settle with faint. Can you turn up on your part?
Well, right now
so-
it sounds good.
yeah, it sounds good right now.
Am I on this mic or am I on this mic here?
No, you're definitely on the headset, Mike.
I'm on the headset mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just okay. If it's better now, then
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. I think that's workable.
okay. That's great.
So we've completely lost track of where we were.
Yes. So let's start over.
Yeah, let's go right to. I think we were still on the divine placebo, weren't we? And
Oh yeah.
I think we'll bring in you, Kirch, because you've kind of had a little bit of experience with placebos in the lab, haven't you? Well, you've kind of studied it a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Sure, I think. I'm sorry. I'm just trying. I'm drawing a blank. I'm about to say, but yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea to try to see if I picked up on everything right. How to try to get that same religious experience, but without religion. If I picked up on you completely right there, sorry, that's been a. Hello.
Yeah, I don't understand. Was there a question?
I'll just
Because I mean, you can get placebo effects from pills or from people, doctors, and I'm sure you should be able to get them from priests just as you can get them from a doctor. But that's an assumption. I haven't looked for those studies yet.
Yeah, because I think, is it Matt Dillahunty? I don't know if this is an example of it, but, you know, in a crisis situation, somebody who prays, although it's not the prayer's not necessarily doing anything, it's because they're getting into the relaxed state of mind, you know, they're breathing and they're kind of, you know, they're taking their mind away. Is that kind of quite an example of the divine placebo?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've started reviewing that part of the literature, and it turns out that if you pray for yourself, you can get an effect. And if you pray for someone who knows that you are praying for them, you can get an effect. But if you pray for someone who doesn't know, then there is no effect, which fits right into the placebo part of it. But if
I even heard of a study where they had shown that there tends to be a slightly negative effect if they know they're being prayed for.
Yeah, yes, that's people who are being prayed for someone else, and you know, they were allotted into groups, and they were told if they were prayed for or not. And the people who were prayed for got a nocebo response. Instead, they got worried. Why are they praying for me? Am I that bad, really? So, and which you can expect. Sorry, I mean, you can expect that kind of effect as well. If there is a psychological component to your healing, you can get it positive or you can get it negative, depending on how you do it.
Yeah, because the other thing could be if you're seriously ill and suddenly a priest comes up next to your bed, you might be thinking, "Oh crikey, I must be really ill," you know, if he's here.
Yeah, definitely.
So, is there any other examples of the religious placebo that you can give us?
Besides praying?
Yeah.
No. So praying, there is, it depends on how you define acupuncture. There are placebo effects from that. And
but then you have the whole crystal thing and the magnet thing and all that as well.
Exactly. But I haven't found any placebo studies on crystal healing and these kind of treatments. Only for the acupuncture.
Okay. Just I've
I'm not
heard
sure
of
why. I'm guessing that the people who are medical researchers are they don't believe in crystals, so they don't compare crystals with placebo because they already at the onset they think crystals are a placebo.
let's see if I remember this correctly. I think his name was Christopher French, who gave. I think he presented papers at a conference or something. I haven't been able to find them in full text, but they were about some study where they used fake, real crystals that New Agers sold.
Oh, really?
And they used similar-looking fake ones that the New Agers themselves said were fake.
Okay.
And of course, when you don't know where you're getting the fake one, it has the exact same effect.
Okay.
So
I would be really interested in seeing that.
Yeah, I've been looking for it as well because it came up because I do debunkings of New Age claims, a lot of that pseudoscience stuff, and it came up, but I haven't been able to find the papers in full text, unfortunately. I think Christopher French, I think his name was.
Christopher French. I'm interested in all reports of, placebo studies on religious rituals because there are very few or none, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, so if your audience knows of, that would be great.
Okay, we've had a few questions come in there, Kitch, so I'll let you take them.
Okay, I'll read this one from Matt Ziller. More a question on biology rather than religion. I'd like to know what Patrik feels are the implications regarding international health issues with respect to the findings of his paper, Parasite Species Richness in Carnivores, Effects of Host Body Mass, Latitude, Geographical Range and Population Density.
So, what was the question? What the health aspects are?
The international health issues, the implications for international health.
Oh, okay. So that paper is on the parasites in carnivores. So that's meat eaters, basically. So there's nothing on humans in there. And we found a lot of factors that are important for explaining why some animals have a lot of parasites and some animals don't. But then it turns out that different parasites colonize for different reasons. So it depends on the lifestyle of the animals, what kind of parasites they pick up. And that paper is really a starting point for further research to pick apart what parasites go to what animal and spread through what lifestyle and so on, which I am continued with. There's a researcher who's now at Duke called Charlie Nunn who's doing that research. So if I can refer to him instead. That was my postdoc, so I just did it for a few years, this parasite stuff, and moved on.
And population density, is that, I would imagine that would be directly correlated with the amount of parasites?
Yeah,
or is that...
Absolutely. But that's the case, especially for contagious diseases and so.
Okay. I'll take the next. The next question. Should religious people get away with stuff that their religion requires that others can't? Example, religious kids come to school late and getting special accommodations because they have some religious service in the morning every day.
That depends, doesn't it? I mean, if it's just a case of not eating pork, I don't see any problem with it.
I think they're meaning more like, for example, with Muslim children, if they have to go, 5 times a day during their prayer, should we be making an accommodation for that?
Yeah, but these things are pretty easy to accommodate, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think. So why not? You shouldn't, make things difficult just because they're like religions. I don't see the point of that, really.
I guess what it comes down to is if they're asking for some special benefits or something like that, then it might be an issue. There was, I don't know if this is true or not, but there was someone who had spent his entire vacation, but then Ramadan came up.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he needs a month paid leave because he can't work if he can't eat.
Right.
And ended up suing for discrimination because he was turned down. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that sort of thing is, then you're really asking for special treatment.
Yeah, that's not okay, I guess. Then we can all make up religions necessitating us not to work for 5 days a week, which would be really nice sometimes.
So I'm just going to take it back to earlier, because what other religions have you had experience with? Because you said Catholicism and Hinduism and Jainism. Have you studied any other religions?
No, yeah, I'm pretty interested in religion.
Yeah.
So I've read a bit about Buddhism as well. I tried to read the Quran, but it was extremely boring and threatening at the same time, which was not a nice combination. I'm going to try it again in a few months or so.
Yeah, I've tried to read it as well, and I just don't know, just could not get through it at all.
No, but it says in the Quran that Allah will shroud the text from true understanding if you're not a believer. So that's what happened.
Convenient.
Absolutely.
Yep. Because that's how you win people over.
Yeah, really. Right. If it doesn't work to threaten you with eternal fire, then that's the way to go.
Yeah, because, well, that's the one thing. Even though I didn't get very far, it was, there will be a terrible doom if you don't do this. There will be a terrible doom. And that kept repeating over and over, and they're just, oh, crikey.
Yeah.
All right. Marty, we'll go to you if you've got any questions.
No, let's see. I think I've actually asked the questions that I wanted. The whole cooperation thing was what I was really interested in, and I got that answered.
So, just to what are you currently working on right now, Patrik?
Well, right now I've been living abroad for the last 2 weeks in the Philippines because my wife worked for Save the Children.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to. I'm getting my salary back in July, so now I have a gap to fill, which I'm filling with. I have a mission to write a book about humanism for the Swedish schools from the Swedish humanists. So that's what I'm doing this month.
All right. So will that kind of be a similar to your first book? Is it a similar idea?
It will be more of a complete book for teachers and kids in high school. So it will be a more advanced level book. Kind of.
And do you think there's quite a lot of misunderstanding about what humanism is?
Yeah, I think many people don't see the point of humanism, because if you live in a country like Sweden, you should turn to ethical philosophy if you want to know about ethics, and to science if you want to know about the world. So what's the point with this humanist approach? And that's what I would want to answer. I'm not sure I'm going to give a better answer than it's a good way to structure your life, to structure your understanding of the world.
Well, we did have someone in the chat room before the show started, so I'll ask this from a devil's advocate point of view. So, what is humanism?
Yeah, short version. It starts with humans, and what we can understand about the world has to do with our brains and our ability to communicate with the external world and each other. There is no other way to find things out about the world than to examine reality and to discuss things with each other and draw on each other's experiences. There is no parallel reality we can turn to. There's no other outside supernatural part of the world. That's humanism. That what you see is what you get, basically. And this also has implications for ethics, that we can't get ethical mandates from outside. We have to agree among ourselves how to treat each other. So it's how the world is and how we should treat each other. That's humanism.
That's a good explanation.
Well, thank you. I have to sharpen it, though.
Maybe, but I liked it.
Okay.
All right, do you have any further questions on that, Marty?
No.
All right, so Kitch?
Actually, one of the topics just is the evolution of the mammalian brain. What exactly, like, that's a huge topic, but what in particular are you interested in mammalian brains?
I'm interested in two things. One is how our lifestyle had imprinted each other. My English is turning worse by the minute here. But how the way animals live gets imprinted in the structure of the brain as evolution comes along. So social animals get bigger parts of the brain that handle sociality, for example. And the interesting thing for me is that my PhD was about sexual differences, and in gorillas, for example, the females live in social groups with tight cooperations, but the males, they don't. They compete with each other, so they have two very different lifestyles. And what I wanted to know is if this is reflected inside the brain. If you can see, there are differences in the brain of these animals. The problem to investigate that, you have to have a lot of dead primate brains, which are not available at the moment.
You mentioned mammalian brains specifically. Wouldn't the same sort of thing be true for other animals as well?
Yeah, very good question. There is a researcher at Stockholm University who's looking at this on guppies. He's trying to select social. He's doing selection experiments on their social living, and he's gonna look at if the brain changes accordingly.
Because sure, I mean, fish schools are a great example of social animals. But I would be, I guess, I mean, biology isn't really my thing, but one thing that comes to mind is like bees and ants, and they're completely, well, almost completely unrelated to mammals, vertebrates, you know. So, but
so my hunch,
the same kind of phenomenon.
My hunch. I mean, you can make very simple computer programs that simulate the movement of ants in groups and fish schools and so on. It's very, very simple brain instructions that give rise to these schooling behaviors. I don't think that's as complicated as, for example, a baboon troop. Their social interactions. It's complex on another level. So I'm not sure if it's going to reflect on the brain, but I mean it's an interesting experiment to do. So we will see what comes from there.
Yeah. Sorry, you go, Kitch.
I was going to say can't remember the name of the project, but it's similar to the Human Genome Project. It's the mapping of the human brain.
Yeah.
Will that play a huge role in your research?
No,
how important is?
Because human brains are very different. I mean, we do so many things differently from animals. That is just a completely different question. I mean, we talk. No other animal comes even close to having this kind of conversation we're having.
Okay. There was one question, and it relates again to Dawkins, his idea of religion as a virus.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think he has a point. I think it's a good point too. That traits that we learn from each other spread like diseases, if you like, or as democracy, if you want to make that democracy across countries. I mean, you can make any comparison you like, but it's the same kind of process. How traits spread. I think religion is one of these things. I mean, concepts of liberal democracy is also spread this way, or of freedom of speech. All the good things that we believe in also spread like viruses.
Okay.
I think this is an empirical question.
Memes, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes. We don't talk about memes anymore because they don't seem to exist in that format. There's no smallest indivisible unit of cultural inheritance. So if you say meme, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. We don't.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, well, memes got another meaning altogether these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, pictures of cats with funny words. That's a bit. Well, they exist anyways.
That's the smallest unit of cultural information, a picture of a cat.
In net speak. All right, Kitch or Marty, do you have any further questions on that?
I really don't think so.
I just want to go back to that paper about parasites and carnivores. What kind of, just brief summary about what you found were the main factors in parasites and carnivores?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, there are the problem with that paper is it analyzes all parasites on all carnivores, and some parasites evolve together with their hosts, and they have very different natural history as to parasites like ticks that spread all across everything that's warm-blooded in the area. So the takeaway message from that paper is that more research is needed. I think that's
And just about, actually, just maybe this is just out of my own interest. The mammals have, animals and plants have ways of defending themselves against microorganisms. Do animals and do mammalians, do animals have a way to defend themselves against parasites like ticks or?
Yeah, they pick ticks from each other. So, but I can't answer that. I'm not sure. I cannot back out of that question. I left the parasite research, so my knowledge is not as good as it should be.
All right. There was so going back to another. So, what's some of the most interesting parts of just religion in general? I mean, what kind of really fascinates you?
Well, it's the whole idea of believing in things that you can never meet, never see, never test. It's why do people do that? And once they do believe it, why do they take it so seriously as to kill people for it? It makes no sense. Yeah. That's what fascinates me. It's some psychological twitch in human brains that makes this work. And makes it so important.
What fascinates me about it is, like, how can people believe something, learn something that's incompatible with it, and still keep believing it? It's like this whole idea of this cognitive dissonance, where you just, well, okay, so it's not true, but I don't care. I'm gonna believe it's true anyway. I mean, what part of it is self-deception and what part of it is, shall we say, genuine belief? Where's the line? I don't know if I'm coming across properly. I mean, I'm not saying that religious people aren't really religious, but on some level, I mean, how many times can you tell a creationist what the theory of evolution actually is, and they will still say Darwin invented the Big Bang to disprove God? They know that's not true, but they believe it anyway.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, people who have blind faith on that level, that's not healthy. But I'm more fascinated about people like Francis Collins, who actually believes in religion and believes in a very odd, I mean, very strongly believes in these strange aspects of religion, like like God came to Earth and died for our sins. Why on earth? What would you have to do that? But still, is a brilliant scientist.
He's a Catholic, isn't he?
No, he's
a Protestant.
He's an evangelical.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's strongly.
I had him mixed up with someone else then.
But he's not a creationist. But he still believes in things that makes you wonder.
Yeah, because I think he's quoted as saying, like, there's so much evidence for a common ancestry, and because of my beliefs, I really wish it wasn't true, but I just have to accept it.
Really?
Oh, it was him. Okay.
Yeah, it's something I probably
that quote's familiar to me, but
Yeah.
I can't place it.
Well, he wrote a book, and it's about kind of trying to harmonize evolution and belief in God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the quotes. He said, like, he really wishes that evolution wasn't so true, but he just has to accept it. So.
Yeah.
But it's quite weird, like in his other beliefs, though. Yeah. But he's managed, but not to knock him as a scientist, because it's also quite strange. Like
make sense of that.
How he worked on the genome project with Craig Venter, who's a non-believer as well, and they both have just such completely polar opposite beliefs.
Another guy who comes to mind is Bob Bachter, who's a paleontologist, who's also a Pentecostal preacher. And that to me just sounds completely incompatible, because I mean, he's a Pentecostal, but he obviously, because he's one of the most recognizable paleontologists in the world.
That's a
apparently.
cognitive dissonance on a very
Yeah.
high level.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sorry, I was going to talk. I don't know. Would this kind of fit into the placebo things like the 12-step program? Have you looked into that with a?
Yeah, that's a very interesting. Actually, if it's a placebo, it's not a very good placebo because they have the same number of people or the same ratio of people who leave alcohol behind as if there's no treatment. So it doesn't really do any difference. It just gives you a social context, which is nice, I guess, if you're an alcoholic. But it doesn't. The treatment doesn't work as a treatment.
Yeah.
It doesn't not even as a placebo.
Yeah. Have you looked into the treatment in part of your research?
No,
Or
just to the data. I mean, if
Okay.
it's a placebo, it's not a good placebo. It's not a good example of a placebo.
Yeah, because I think the first thing you have to admit is that you're not in control of yourself.
Yeah.
That you have to surrender to a higher power. And they're very crafty. They just say, the higher power can be whatever you want, but it's quite obvious what they mean the higher power to be.
It can be whatever you want as long as it came to Earth 2,000 years ago, became human, and got nailed to a board. But it can be a rock. That's okay.
Because, it's just like I say, that's, for me, the most interesting part of religion is just the traditions and, the habits that people get into.
Yeah. I mean, there are secular Jews who could keep celebrating their Passover rituals and everything without believing in God whatsoever, and that makes perfect sense. It's just like I celebrate Christmas, and I don't believe in the Santa Claus, and I don't believe in Jesus, or I don't believe in tomten, which we have in Sweden. So on. So, but I can still do this, go through the motions, and have fun, and eat with my family, and so forth. That makes perfect sense, I think.
Yeah,
but that's not religious, really.
No, exactly. It's. I mean, I celebrate Christmas, but it's certainly it has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just, spending time with your family, basically.
Yeah. But we put out a bowl of porridge on the porch every Christmas because that's you're supposed to feed the gnome living outside your house so it doesn't make trouble for you the rest of the year. That's just a fun thing to do with the kids. Why not do it? I mean, it doesn't really. It's not that anyone believes this. It's just a tradition. Yeah.
So you're one of these people like, some of the harmless, kind of more benign traditions. You're all in favour of just celebrating them in a secular way.
Yeah, I can get very angry with Christians who want to claim that, no, you have to know why we really celebrate Christmas. But I don't really celebrate Christmas for their reason at all. And that annoys me to no end when they start claiming these things.
And they really celebrate Christmas because it's halfway through winter. That's...
In Sweden, that's a big thing.
Yeah, people would stock up on food, and when they're halfway through and they have more than half of the supplies left, they throw a party.
All right, Kitcher, Marty, do you have any further questions there? I'll have a look at the chat room to see what they're saying.
There was one great comment in the chat room that needs to be pointed out.
Okay.
Surrendering to a higher power. Yeah, surrender to the booze. Isn't that the problem already?
Surrender to the what? The gurus?
The booze.
That?
Surrender to the alcohol.
Oh, yeah. That's one point.
Oh, here we go. The Soviet Mole asks, do you think religion serves a purpose evolutionary, or ever has done?
One more time.
Do you think religion serves an evolutionary purpose, or ever has done? It
might, and that's one of the things these placebo studies will look into. Because if you can turn on your immune response through treating your brain to some religious ritual, then it can actually make an evolutionary difference in the long run.
But it has certainly affected cultural evolution, right?
Religion?
Yeah,
I mean, religion
if
is cultural
we're
evolution.
yeah, exactly.
But biological evolution, I think, I mean, following religious rules and sticking together in a close-knit society, living healthier lives, that's all makes evolutionary sense. So I think you can make a good case for an evolutionary purpose of religion, yes. So maybe that's why religion now is coming under, I mean, it's disappearing because it's not really having that function anymore.
Yeah. Lots of noise from you, Kutch.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Oh, yeah, there is. Sorry, there is a question coming through. I'll stick it through. And Marty, can you take that one?
There we go. Extrapolating from Patrik's 2010 paper, the number of cultural traits is correlated with female group size, but not with male group size in chimpanzee communities. Should we be breeding more atheist girls?
Okay. I'm trying to make sense of that. Breeding more. No, we should try to convert as many people as possible. That's a much faster way to do it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, one effect of religion in society, like from an evolutionary, it's things like birth control.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, obviously some religions don't believe in any form of birth control, so...
No, that's true. I mean, there are studies showing that religious people have more babies. I mean, strongly religious people have more babies than less religious people, which could be an evolutionary pattern. But I mean, if you're an atheist, you're not born that way, really. I mean, most of us become atheists, have become atheists through life, and in that way, cultural evolution is a much faster way. It works much faster than biological evolution. Learning is the better way to do it than to try to breed atheist kids. I don't even know how to make an atheist kid.
I guess it's a reference to atheists having more kids or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, I mean, atheism isn't something that's passed down.
No.
So,
I mean, I have 3 kids. I'm not teaching them to be religious, but I'm not teaching them to be atheist either.
No.
And they're growing up just like any Swede. They don't meet religion as regularly as I did, for example. I'm not sure what they will turn out to be, but it's not through breeding that they will turn out to be anything.
Kitch, do you have anything there?
Sorry, just my brain is... Can't really think.
No, it's all right. I was gonna... Oh, and I've lost my train of thought there when you lost your train of thought, so there we go. We're seeing some effect there. What was my question? Really Marty, do you have anything there while I try and regain?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't. And I'm looking through the chat room and seeing if anyone has anything, but it doesn't look like it.
It's crystal clear now.
The only thing that's coming into my head is Eurovision.
My kids are upstairs watching it now. So
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Are you going to
It's
watch
like
it?
Voluntarily?
Did I say anything about kids? Coerced.
Yeah, like the chat room's saying, we mentioned atheist sex and everyone's minds have just switched off now. There's someone asking me, what do you think of Kropotkin? I don't know what that...
The anarchist Kropotkin, is that it?
Yeah, I'll have to... There's a little bit of a lag, so Soviet Mole, can you tell us who you mean by Kropotkin, please?
If I'm correctly, he's the atheist who promoted cooperation in a big way, like before the Russian Revolution. I haven't read him.
But was it...
Mutual aid guy, he says.
Yeah, anarchist, I think.
All right. Just quite curious, it just came into my head there. Like, I think, is there a kind of strong link, would say, between what you were saying about cooperation and that manifesting in, like, say, socialism or communism?
Oh, well, that's coerced cooperation, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there are different ways to organize a society, and cultural evolution works through experimentation and selection of the best versions, and that was not a very good way to go. I mean, mild versions of socialism have worked very well, but the strong militant version have not worked very well. That's why we're seeing less and less of it, I think.
Yeah, but I said, do you see that like as a kind of extension, or like kind of the idea of cooperation? Sorry. Or like a manifestation of it in some way, like, well, taken to an extreme almost.
I mean, all ways to organize your society are manifestations of different way of cooperating.
Okay.
Socialism as well as liberalism. I don't see it as a... So yes and no.
So libertarianism even, would that fall under?
Yeah, I'm having problems with libertarianism but on a basic level, it puts one freedom, your freedom to own things, before everything, all other freedoms, which I think you can make that argument. But these are political discussions that are difficult. I think you can't put the liberty to own things before, when you can't value that very highly when there are starving people in the world. But that's my personal opinion.
Okay, and there's a question came up in the chat room. I think this will be the last question of the evening from the chat room. Just what is your opinion on the term new atheism?
I use it, and I don't see the point of not using it. And the new atheists are just more vocal than the old atheists, but it's the same arguments that's been with us since antiquity, basically. Same arguments, more vocal atheists. Sure, that's pretty new.
Yeah, because like some people have a real difficulty with the term.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's been used by certain portions of the media in a very insulting way now.
Yeah.
Like saying they're just as bad as the fundamentalists kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too. But I mean, I don't want to fight about the term, just as long as it's better to discuss the issue at hand.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's always about the person, not the label that's attached to them.
Yeah,
that's what's the most important thing is. Anyway, we are coming up to the end of the show. It's I can't get rid of this cold. Anyway, we've got 6 minutes left, so we'll start to wrap up.
I will pray for you.
We'll see how that. Well, tune in next week and we'll see how that works. All right. So, like I said, we are coming to the end of the show. So, as always, we allow our guests a little soapbox moment. Patrik, if there's anything you want to promote, or anything you would like people to buy or read or anything like that, now's your moment.
Yeah, buy this book. No. I don't know. Just think for yourself, people. I think your audience does already, so I'm not sure I can encourage that any more than already happening. But it's been an honor to be on the show, so thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been great having you.
It was great having you.
Yeah, and so Marty.
No, just once again, it was great to have you on the show. Interesting subjects to discuss.
I think it's the first time in a long time you've actually had stuff to talk about yourself.
Yeah,
because you've usually just sat.
I usually don't. It depends on the guest. Very often we have guests that deal with subjects that I'm just not interested in. And then I have like 2 questions, and then I'm just sitting there.
All right, Kitch, your thoughts, please.
That was a really, really brilliant show, actually. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And again, a big thank you to Patrik. Yes, guest, this show will be on YouTube within sometime tomorrow. It'll be up there. And then, like I say, the audio gets sent away to our editor, who kind of cuts it down, takes out all the pauses, the silences, and tonight's big tech glitches, and he makes it sound nice and professional, believe it or not. It is possible. It can happen. But yeah, everyone, if you want to get in touch with us, if you have any further questions or queries, it's contact@rollingwilllogic.com. And oh yeah, with regards to the Antimatter Bandits show that we do, a few things I'd like to point out. Number one, the people who go to the commentary videos and then complain that there's silences and pauses in it. Those videos are commentaries to be played along with the episode or film that we talk about. I've had to point this out a few times, so if you are, I'm sorry, just to get that out clear. And last night we were due to do a hangout, weren't we, Marty? But I think you had to pull out.
Yeah, I had a problem that I didn't anticipate, but it turns out that my fiance was working early today and tomorrow as well, so
yeah,
I have to be quiet.
Silent running for you.
Yeah, it's a very thin wall between my office and the bedroom, so
yep,
it's not gonna work.
And I suppose, as always, everyone's asking when's the next Spirit Science through.
I started watching episode 22 again, and it's so long and so dumb. And it's just painful to make it through, but I need to put something together because it's been too long now, and Jordan has been on fire. He's putting out one video after another.
Yep. And Kitch, we are getting a lot of people saying, when are you going to make videos now?
That's an interesting question. I need to think of an idea. I need to think of the presentation style. I need to think of what I'm actually going to do and edit it and all that. And it's just a hectic couple of weeks ahead of me as well, because this week I'm in Nottingham, and next Hagen, and then I'm going to be in Missouri, then Liverpool. So it's just kind of sitting down and
interesting. I suppose you can reveal who you're going to be meeting in Nottingham, because some of the audience will know this man.
Yes, Phil Moriarty.
Yep, Phil Moriarty from 60 Symbols. Kitch will be meeting up with him, and I really think you should take your camera with you to get a few moments with him for the Trolling with Logic channel.
I'll see you, because I'm bringing over a lot of stuff.
All right, but yeah, I think it's because you're coming up to conference season now, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I've got one in Limerick, and then I'm doing the ESOF in 2014 in Copenhagen, which is, well, I'm not actually doing anything there, I'm just attending. And then I'm doing one in Missouri.
Okay.
So that's going to be interesting.
Oh yeah, and just to let everyone know, the Antimatter Bandits, we have our own channel on YouTube. YouTube, just Antimatter Bandits, all one word, you'll find it there, and it's collaborate. It's an open channel, we all have access to it, and we'll all upload our bits of geekiness on there. So
yeah, it's basically just us having fun instead of doing, well, I think it is fun to do like debunking stuff, but that's not what it's about. It's just about us being nerds.
Yes, there's lots
which is a different kind of fun.
Yeah, it's especially lots of myself and Bartimer watching Star Trek Voyager and getting quite angry, which isn't too difficult for anyone who's watched it. Anyway,
and the prequel.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. I think we will have to wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for coming along. And again, big thumbs up or round of applause, whatever you can do in the chat room for Patrik. It's been great having you, and we shall see you all next week. Our guest is Spencer Fields, the chairman of the Scottish Secular Society, newly elected chairman, and the vice chairman, whose name I can't pronounce again. I'm really not very good with foreign names. I've probably mangled your name so many times tonight. All right. Okay, everyone. Have a good weekend, or have a good night, or if your weekend's just starting, have a good one, and we shall see everyone next week. All the best, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. It was completely different. Everyone was smoking pot, and it was not in the religious part of Virginia, but
yeah.
But it was different.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Marty or Kitch, do you want to come in? I think Marty, you see.
Yeah. I was thinking, if we go back to the book, the arguments against the existence of God, you said were so simple that even a child can understand it. But there we get into the whole arguments against what God, because everyone has this. Every theist has their own idea of what God is.
Yeah.
And I usually don't even try to say that God doesn't exist. I simply say I don't believe that he does, and try to argue against, point out problems with the arguments they give for the existence of God. Could you give some examples of these arguments against?
Yeah, actually, the very first picture in the book is of different gods.
Yeah.
Here we go. And there is a heart somewhere for God is love and so forth. So it's about it's several pages in the book, so there are several arguments that is gone through, and they all relate to different concepts of God. I mean, if you say God is love, that's just a play of words, basically. And if God is a guy in the sky, there's no such evidence. And if he's outside time and space, you're just making up, and so on. It's you have to walk through these different ideas of God and take them one by one, basically, and end up with a conclusion that there is no concept of God that seems reasonable. That's how I try to do it.
Yeah. So, what's your kind of overall goal for the book? I mean, do you want to see it maybe kind of given out in schools or by parents, each title?
Samarbete.
Yes, and he is currently working on a project called The Divine Placebo, looking into the placebo effects of religion on society. So, Marty, I'll let you introduce the guest, and you can do it in your native tongue. Just say welcome to.
Välkommen till Trolling with Logic.
Tack så väldigt.
Lindenfors.
Tack så väldigt mycket. It's an honor to be on the show.
All right, it's great to have you. So, we'll get you. Well, we'll probably go to the very start, like the first book and that. So, where did the idea for that come about?
This one?
Yeah, that one. That
one.
Yeah.
I have to plug the books.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a simple idea. I ended up in all these discussions about God and if God exists and everything. I thought that the arguments against God's existence are so simple a child could understand them. And so I thought, but there is no such children's book. So I thought that was my mission, and to summarize it as easily as possible so that anyone could get it.
All right. And I think that guest's asking the same questions he did last week. Why did you not put Muhammad on the front cover of the book?
I'm sorry?
Why did you not put Muhammad on the front cover of your book?
Well, it's Allah, actually, if you look closely.
That's what you call pwned.
Because apparently it's okay to depict Allah or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting question. You're not supposed to depict anything in Islam, are you? I'm not sure about that.
I think it's just Muhammad, isn't it?
No, that's true. It's just Muhammad. It's his white. It depends on the sect, isn't that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was just interested because you wrote the book, and I've spoken to Marty about this because he says in Sweden religion's a very private matter, and Marty says he's always seen himself as a bit of an outsider because he's very interested in religion and he's an outspoken atheist. So, I mean, how did you end up like that? And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Trolling with Logic. And I don't know, the date is the 10th of May 2014. It's 8 p.m. Central European Time, 7 p.m. in the UK, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time over in the States. Just the usual announcements. Like I say, it's a live call-in show. You can call in any time, as you can see below us. Skype contact Trolling with Logic, and we'll add you in due course to ask your question to the guest or the panel. And also to remind yourself that this show, everything's recorded and uploaded later, so if you call in, you do grant us permission to use your likeness. Also with that, the show is recorded under a public domain license, so once it's uploaded, feel free to mirror it in part or whole, just link back to us as a common courtesy. And I don't think there's any other big announcements. No. So I'll just go very quickly around the panel and welcome you back, Kitch. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
That's grand. And welcoming back and in full motion. Marty, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing much better now.
Yeah, you can actually move now on the screen.
Yeah, I can move now, and wow, I got this new camera like 3 weeks ago, and then of course my face turned into something that, well, basically I looked like when I was 15.
Yeah.
Like I had chicken pox, but that's taken care of now. So I'm actually moving today.
Yep, that's great to hear. So I think we can just get straight into introduce our guest, and I hope I've remembered all the details correct. He's an associate professor of zoology at Stockholm University. He's written the book God Probably Does Not Exist, and he wrote a book in Swedish. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the title. Marty, it's Cooperation, the name of the book, so you can pronounce the Swedish, going against kind of what we know.
Well, I have a bit of a special story because I went to Catholic convent school as a kid. My first 9 years in school. There's one Catholic convent school in Sweden. And
Vadstena, eller?
No, it's in Sockenplan in Stockholm.
Oh,
so I was taught by nuns all through my basic education, which is rather odd. And this gave me in Sweden, especially since I'm not Catholic, or even my parents are not religious. But the school in the area I grew up was very poor, and my mother just freaked out, and she put me in this convent school instead, and which was a pretty good school, but it was deeply religious, and it's hard to have all these people around you who kind of devote their lives to a religion, and then you come home, and my parents were not religious, so their take on it was like, well, that's just what they think. It's not important. You can just go to the school and everything. So it made me think very early about these things.
Yeah. So what's some of the more interesting experiences of going to Catholic school that you can remember?
Well, sexual education is pretty special to get from nuns. I'm not sure I should go into that any more than that. But there was no, well, I mean, it's all very normal when you grow up in it.
Yeah.
Anything is normal when you grow up in it.
So is it difficult to kind of, when you left the Catholic school, to get used to just being, because you said the first 9 years of your schooling was in a Catholic school, yeah?
Yeah.
And so then going into like basically the secular schooling, was that a big change?
Yeah, I moved to the States.
Right.
Then my father worked in Washington, so we moved there, and I went to American high school, which
to their kids along with Bibles.
I'm not sure. I want, kids who grow up in religious families and religious contexts who never meet these arguments. Yeah. My goal is that if they pick up this book just out of curiosity, they will get interested and start seeing the gaps in the argument they have been presented with, and so on. I mean, most Swedes, as Martin knows, are not very interested in religion, so it's not a goal to get most Swedes to read it, because they couldn't care less, which is fine by me. But people who do care, kids who do care, I hope they read it.
All right. And what kind of reaction has the book got so far?
Well, not much reaction at all. It's got good reviews, but there is no one burning it or anything, which it's kind of required to get these books to take off.
Yeah, because it was picked up. Richard Dawkins is promoting it, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Because we had another guest on a few weeks ago, and their work got picked up by Richard Dawkins.
No, I got the book translated, and the Swedish publisher published it in English, and so I sent this book to Richard Dawkins' librarian, the person handling the bookshop on Richard Dawkins' website, and she thought it was a good book.
All right.
And that's the way it came about.
Okay, Kitch, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. I was actually on your website, and I was just looking at some of the research areas that you were interested in. And
Okay.
one of the things that caught my eye was phylogenetic analysis of sexual size dimorphism.
Yeah.
Could you kind of give a brief rundown of what exactly that is?
Yeah, that was my thesis. So it's phylogenetic